Well, hello, everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to Center Court, our MBA festival. Today, we want to talk about the MBA experience at Michigan Ross. We have someone with us who actually has already participated in a previous session. She was fantastic in it with my colleague, Matt Simons. It's Taya Sapp, who's the interim director of full-time MBA admissions at Ross. And we also have a current student. We're going to call her Geets. That's her nickname, Rao. And she is, I'm assuming, second year, right, Geets?
Correct. Yes.
Perfect. So you're in a great position to give us sort of the story of the Ross experience from the front lines, which I love.
Happy to.
Right.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
We're just going to cover some basics first, if you don't mind. Taya, what makes the Michigan Ross program stand out? Now, I happen to know an awful lot about this program, and I could answer that question myself, but I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
All right. Well, that's good to know. I can flip things over to you if I have any tech issues.
Totally.
I think the thing that Ross is most known for is learning by doing, action-based learning. It is totally our ethos at the school. We have a program called MAP. It stands for Multidisciplinary Action Projects, which is, I would say, the number one reason people choose to come to Ross. And I talk to alums all the time that say, that was my favorite part of my experience, aside from the people I met. Probably the people is the first thing they say. But I think that action-based learning component is huge. We'll probably talk about MAP a little bit further, but basically it's a consulting project that every first-year student does. That's part of our core curriculum. So action-based learning, learning by doing. If that's how you learn, Ross needs to be on the radar for sure.
I want to just underline this, because not that you're selling this short, but I want to explain to people how different it is at Ross. All the schools today talk about experiential learning, but more often than not, it's a project in a course. What Ross does is totally break the academic calendar and say our students are going to do nothing for weeks on end, except work on this consulting project. And that is so different from what any other school in the world is doing that I just needed to underline that, because, you could say, oh, all these programs have experiential learning. No, they don't have what Michigan Ross has. Just the staff that you have to handle the logistics of getting the right projects and putting the right teams of diverse students on those projects is beyond anything that almost any school has in the world. So I just want to underline that. I'll turn it back to you. I'll give you back the mic.
7 full weeks. I was going to say, it's 7 full weeks. And when we talk about internships are 10 weeks. So that's why we talk about it, is people end up thinking about it like an internship. So it is very substantial.
Okay, what else?
The other things I would say, the opportunity to do interdisciplinary study. So we have 117 graduate programs at U of M that are in the top 10. So students can do classes outside of Ross up to 10 of the 57 credits. So if somebody wants to take a course at the law school or public health or public policy, the School of Education, all of those are right at the fingertips. Most of them are within a block or two from the business school itself. And you can do dual degrees. We have over 20 different dual degrees. Geets came to school with a graduate degree already, so I don't think she's one that is adding that on. But dual degrees are pretty popular. We have one with the School of Environment and Sustainability. That's probably our most popular, but a lot of students that do dual degrees with the med school, the law school, the policy school. I think that opportunity for interdisciplinary study is super popular. And the other thing I'd say is impact. We have a lot going on with social impact. I referenced this in the panel earlier, but one of my favorite blogs is this 100+ ways to make a social impact at Ross, just because it talks about the breadth of different opportunities. You can be a non-voting member of a local nonprofit. You can be doing consulting projects with a small business or nonprofit based in Detroit or in Ann Arbor. You can be doing Open Road, which is a road trip where you spend 4 weeks in the month of May, with each week at a different entrepreneur, usually a social entrepreneur of some sort, doing consulting projects all over the country. So there's this big variety. Geets is on the Social Venture Fund, which makes investments with companies and have a triple bottom line. So all these different things that students have the option to do, whether it's just 2 hours a week or one time a year or maybe 15 hours a week. It's really a lot of different things that people can do depending on what they want to get involved in and how deep they want to go.
And I should just note that we named the Michigan Ross MBA Program of the Year a couple of years ago. And primarily it's because of the continual innovation in the program that the school does. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's almost like every few months there's something new. There's a new tweak. There's a new twist. There's something that's really on the edge. And the diversity within the program of things that you can take advantage of, frankly, are mind-blowing at Ross. Okay, Geets, I got to ask you, you get a master's in public health already from Yale. Why in the world do you want an MBA? What caused you to get an MBA in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. Takes me back to a couple of years ago when I was putting my apps together. So as you mentioned, I have a master's in public health already. My concentration there was in chronic disease epidemiology. So it was a very analytical concentration. And so naturally, I kind of fell into roles within healthcare analytics. So I worked at CVS Health in their Caremark, which is their pharmacy benefits management division. And then I worked for essentially what used to be a former analytic consulting arm of the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. I started that second job right when COVID hit. So I think I was at the job for maybe 4 weeks before everything shut down. And my job went from going downtown, taking the train, feeling like a cool city girl, to being completely remote. And that's, I think that was one trigger for, hey, I think, while I like this job, I really like my team, I think I want something more. An MBA was always part of my plan. It was a little bit further down the line. I think if COVID hadn't happened, I might have applied like this year instead. But because of COVID, I think I said, hey, this is not what I see myself doing for the next, 5, 10, 15 years. I really want to learn a little bit more about business, a little bit more about strategy within healthcare. That has not changed. The passion for healthcare has not changed. And so you'll see I do a ton of healthcare work at Ross and hope to continue to do it after I graduate as well. So that was my initial motivation for the MBA, is just, how do businesses run? How does healthcare in this country work? Which, as you know, is a complicated question that we're always trying to find an answer to.
And yours is in many ways a classic story about why you get an MBA. It's to do a pivot in your career.
Correct.
You were finding yourself in a more narrow field, and you wanted to have a broader perspective and increase the aperture of your opportunities. And an MBA is the ideal vehicle to do that. Now, I want to go back to Taya, and I want to ask you, were you involved at all in the decision to admit Geets?
Yeah, I called her. I got to tell her she was admitted.
Oh, see, I knew somehow there would be that connection. It's an intuitive thing, right? So tell me what made her stand out in the applicant pool.
I mean, I'm going to have to think about her application again. Now I just know her experiences. But I think that she did have this experience in healthcare, we have a lot of opportunities in healthcare, and it's a big area of growth for us. And so she had perspective that she could bring about what the industry looks like in 2 different industries. Having the graduate degree, I think is also a good indicator. She had this analytic background, but having that, she had a clear, she had a lot of times we'll see, I already have a business degree or have these types of things. And when we have that, we're looking at, well, why do you want an MBA? What does that look like? And so I think that she was able to, I'm pretty sure I remember she was able to articulate that really well. But she also brought personality. I still remember, Geets, you wrote in your application about biking across the country. And so I felt like I really got to know you. I was confident about your work experience and your background. But I remember the personality too, and seeing how you're going to be involved, who you were outside of work. That came through in your application. So it was clear that we could see she was a strong fit for the culture as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you actually remember that her essay or one of her essays involved biking across the country,
Yeah.
because it just shows me how intimately and how involved you are in the future of your students who come to the school. It's fantastic. Now, Geets, can you recall the moment that Taya called you and said, we want you to be a member of the Ross class of 2024? Is that, are we in 2023?
Yeah.
I get these
Oh.
years mixed up.
I remember it well. It's actually a story I still tell to this day. So this was in 2020 was when I was getting admitted for a 2021 start. So it was December. I'd applied in round one. I had gone home to my parents in Dallas for several weeks. I just said, hey, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, I'm just going to bundle it all and just work from home. So I was home and I knew, okay, the call is supposed to come this day. Like I didn't know when, didn't know anything. I usually screen my calls and I really never answer any phone calls from people I don't know. I still remember because I was working that day and it was, I think, about 3:00 Central. So closer to 4 Eastern. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have not gotten a call. There's nothing coming from Michigan. Like that, I was on all the Reddit and the forums and poets and quants and everything like you could possibly check to see when those calls were being made. And it was like, I think it was like 2:57. And I had a check-in with my manager, actually, like my one-on-one with my manager at 3:00. And that's when I get this call from Michigan. I was like, I had to tell my manager, like, I will be right back. I'll be a few minutes late. I answered this call. Of course, it was Taya with, good news about obviously getting into Ross, but then also information about the scholarship. And I kid you not, I feel like I probably blacked out. I don't remember the words that followed when she mentioned, the scholarship and all the other opportunities that Michigan would bring. So I think it was very special because I got to celebrate with my parents and my brother like right away. Everyone was working from home. So I think that made the moment even more special. I still remember it, December 2nd, 2020. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. I hope there was a lot of hooting and hollering in Dallas.
Oh yeah, my mom was downstairs and my dad was in his office and my brother, he was in undergrad still at that time. And so he was like, oh, I think she's just got a call. She's on a call, be quiet. And then I come out and my brother was the first one to see me and he's like, and then I just I don't know, I burst into tears probably. So
yeah.
it was a good day for sure.
You got to love it. And tell you, that's one of the fun parts of your job.
Definitely.
Spreading good news to people who are, after all, the MBA application process and admissions, it's an anxiety-ridden process for people because it's important to people's lives. And so to be able to deliver that good news must be really special. Now, Keith, tell me your first impressions of the Ross MBA program. Were there any surprises?
So first impressions when I got here or while I was making my decision? Okay. So fun fact, I accepted my Ross admission sight unseen. I had never been to Ann Arbor, didn't know what I was really getting into with that respect. I'd gone to a big state school for undergrad. So I think that was also part of my motivation to come to Michigan. I wanted to, exactly. And so I felt, okay, it's got to be similar. Like it was close by. I used to live in Chicago. And so it was an easy drive, an easy move. But, I think you hear so much during the process. You talk to so many people, current students, faculty, staff, all of this. And you're like, can it really be that good? Are there really like that many things that I could possibly do? And I think that's what shocked me. And I think Taya touched on it earlier is like, and you as well, John, there's no shortage of things to do. I remember being super excited, but also so overwhelmed in my first week or two, right? Because that's when you're going to the club fair and you have apps due for different things and classes, right? And again, I didn't have a business background. So my first few accounting and all those classes it was like a foreign language to me. And so, that's a whole different story. But I think I just was having to make, some tough decisions. Like, what do I do? What do I prioritize? Like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Like I literally had to sit down with a spreadsheet and, be like, okay, these are the things I really want to do. This is the amount of time I have in a day, in a week, in a month. And, make those decisions. But again, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, totally. And you are a Pinkerton scholar. Taya, can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so we have full scholarships for that are general for all students, but this one in particular is for students interested in healthcare. So we have funding that gives full scholarships, but it's a cohort program. So we look at people who have different types of backgrounds in healthcare and different types of interests. And there's cohort experiences so they can get to know one another, have kind of a community within the broader healthcare community. We have different social events. One of our associate deans got everyone together for a holiday party. There's speakers that we have that come in. But the other thing is there's professional development funding. So students can have funding for healthcare related experiences. So when we have a healthcare trek where students spend 3 days where they're visiting different companies. We've done them before in Chicago or the Bay Area or Boston. They can get their travel expenses covered. Or there's an upcoming course actually that's being taught in Paris, comparing healthcare strategies. It's going to be taught in May. And so the students in this program can get a lot of the fees covered for that particular course. Since it has additional fees being in Paris. So there's conferences, different types of things, but it's fairly flexible. And I think it's nice. The biggest benefits are being part of a cohort, having that additional funding, and of course, the full tuition scholarship.
Great. Keats, how did you find your classmates? How would you describe them?
Let's see, I'm trying to think. You engage with people in your section, you engage with them in clubs and funds and all of these things. You engage with them on, fall football days on, Saturday mornings when you're tailgating at 9 a.m., right? So you see them in all different, aspects of life. I think this has stayed true, since before I got into Ross and even, now 80 days to graduation. It's a very cooperative community. I think something I was looking for when I was applying to business school, I had heard all the stereotypes. Oh, it's super competitive. Recruiting is so hard, blah, blah, blah. I knew that, right? I had to mentally get ready for that. What I knew was that I needed a space and a group of people where even though I knew we were competing, it didn't always feel like a competition.
Yeah.
You hear horrible stories and, you never want to be a part of that. And I never felt that, even with consulting recruiting, which is so tough, there's just so many roadblocks along the way. You never had, people like withholding information or things like that. Everyone was willing to case each other and prep each other for interviews and be like, hey, this coffee chat just opened up, you should sign up. Like that, there was no shortage of that. And I think the FACT group also contributes to that. So that's the first year peer group that you kind of train with for recruiting. And that's same thing with classes, right? Like I said, I didn't have a traditional business background, and so I was having to go to friends who did have more of that background and be like, can you please explain this concept to me in accounting or economics or whatever it was? Because I just, I had to be a little humble, and that's a skill that I had to work on as well. But just being able to ask for help is so huge, and I can go to anyone in my class for that.
Yep. Now, one of the interesting things that you've done at Ross already is to kind of cement your interest in the business of health. And you've done that in part by you're now the co-lead of health investments for the Ross Social Venture Fund. Talk to me a little bit about that and what that involves and what kind of opportunity it is for you to learn about how to make impact investments in the healthcare field.
Sure. So the Social Venture Fund, I believe, is the first student-led impact investing fund of its kind in the country.
Yes, it is. And I know other schools who've come to Ross to benchmark it.
We teach them how to do it. Yeah. And so that was one of, if I had to pick like three things or three reasons I came to Ross, SVF would have been kind of on that list as well. There's several different funds that you can choose from to apply to. It is a pretty competitive process, and SVF is, one of the favorites just because of how unique it is. And going back to what Taya said, there's a huge interest in social impact just generally across, the different Ross MBA classes. And so, obviously fortunate to be selected as an investment associate. So last year I was, an associate in the healthcare group, I guess you could say. So that meant, I would source companies, screen them with members of my circle, and then we would, vote them in. Like, do we like them enough? Do we think they're financially sound, but two, are they really making that first order impact of trying to tackle the root cause of a problem? Do we like the team, et cetera, et cetera? And then we would, perform due diligence on them. Loved that experience. Obviously, with my background in healthcare, it just was an opportunity to nerd out and to see what kind of amazing companies and founders were, entering the space. As a co-lead for that circle, my job, a lot of it was, administrative, but a lot of it was, I did a lot of the upfront sourcing of the companies over the summer, just trying to understand, like, what does the space look like? Just because healthcare changes so rapidly. And I think over the last 3 to 4 years with COVID the space is just completely different. And so every year is like a new trend, a new, industry is kind of growing. So me and my co-lead, we would source these companies over the summer, present them to our circles and have them screen these companies. And so that means, going through pitch decks, talking to founders, things like that. I made sure all communication was kind of sound and, we followed the process all the way through, because SVF especially, they follow we have a democratic process. So every round companies kind of get voted on by the circle, by the fund, like how much further do we want to take them, which is, I think, an incredible opportunity. As someone with a healthcare background, I'm looking at a climate company, in our fund meeting, and I'm like, I don't know anything about them. But then you're having these climate experts and these herb students like explain to me like why this company is awesome. And I'm like, all right, like, I trust you guys. I'm gonna, vote for them to make it to the next round. So other, people do that for us for health. Right now we're in the middle of due diligence, which is pretty exciting. So we have 8 companies that we're, we have separate groups and people are conducting due diligence, and we'll start presenting that to the fund, whether or not we should invest in them or not invest in them, and why, for both regards. So it's a pretty heavy workload lift, but it's just an incredible learning opportunity. Not only you're doing the hands-on stuff, but during the fall of your first year, you're also participating in education. So as someone who, again, didn't have a business background and definitely did not have a VC background, every Friday, we'd start off with what very basics, like what is VC, right? What is impact investing within the space? What is a financial model, right? Like, you're learning all of these things like in a kind of a classroom setting, and then you're getting to apply that, like hands-on, like literally the same day, the next day, right? Like it's so real time. It's incredible.
And Taya, most students obviously are involved in these kinds of activities, one or the other, given their personal interests. But one of the things that I've always admired about Michigan Ross is the percentage of women who are in leadership positions in your co-curricular activities. Do you know what the number is now? I mean, it's always been impressive, but
yeah. Really impressive right now. I mean, we're doing elections, so I don't know about the next year's class, but right now, 86% of the professional clubs at Ross are led or co-led by a woman, which is just incredible. So, I mean, Geetz is also president of the Healthcare and Life Sciences Club, but we have the Tech Club, the Consulting Club, the Marketing Club, you name it. The largest and most impactful clubs at the school have a woman at the front.
That is super impressive. And I don't need to say to people, because it's true, that, business has historically been a male-dominated field, and the fact that your culture is so welcoming and so embracing of diversity, that 86% of the clubs are run by female students, says a lot about how comfortable people are in your environment. Now, another interesting thing to me, since we are talking about the business of health, is the fact that historically, MBAs have not been attracted to this field in a big way. There are a lot of reasons for that. And if you look at your latest employment report, 42% went into consulting, 17% went into tech, 15% into finance, 6% into health. And I think that healthcare and the business of health, which is a broader definition of the industry and all that's happening in it, is going to be one of the biggest opportunities for MBAs in the future. It's going to be what technology became in the last quarter of a century for MBAs. And people who are getting involved in this, I think, are going to have an incredible roadway moving forward. Now, Keats, I noticed that you did your summer internship with BCG in the consulting field, but were you in the healthcare practice for them or what?
So I was not, and that was intentional. So,
you want to try something new.
Yeah, as we've talked about, my entire background is in healthcare. I want to continue that. So my plan, even during my recruitment process and all the conversations I had and kind of some of the, metrics I use to decide like what firms I would like to be, most a part of is how comfortable are they with letting you lean into healthcare very, very early. And, of course, like the consulting model has a very generalist approach, right? They want you to try a bunch of different things, find something you like, and then you become an expert in it and, eventually become partner. And that's what you focus on for the next 20 years, right? That's the model. I know that this is the field that I'm most excited about. One, because it's what my background and what my training is in, but two, it's exactly what you just said, right? There is just so much growth that is about to happen there. There's so much diversity of different organizations and kinds of people that you work with within healthcare that I think like, even if I say I'm doing healthcare, I could do 50 different things within healthcare and work with so many different companies. And so I know that I want to specialize in the healthcare and life sciences practice at BCG once I start full-time this summer. And so I said, hey, I had to have a hard talk with myself. Geets, you've never done anything not healthcare. Even my map was a healthcare related map. And so I pushed myself out of my comfort zone and I asked BCG, could you actually avoid healthcare for me? I really need to see if I can, hack this job in any other industry. And so I was actually in the industrial goods practice. I learned about a company I never knew existed, an industry I never knew existed, and I loved it. I worked with an all-male team, which was also new to me, both on the BCG side and on the client side. But it was a phenomenal summer experience, and I'm glad I tried it. I know it's not exactly what I want to do going forward, but still, I'm really grateful that they let me, have that flexibility and that they are also so willing to let me just do healthcare, starting in the summer, whenever my start date is.
Are you going back to BCG?
Yes.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's always nice to come back in August and have a job offer in your pocket so that your second year can be fully devoted to your studies and your friends and all the different clubs and activities you're involved in and not have to worry about that job search. That's a real luxury. That's great. So, okay, transport yourself back 2 years when you were going through this process. Is there something that you wish you had known then that you now know and that you can share with other prospective applicants?
I think something I tell prospective students, because I talk to them a lot. I was the former director of prospective students for our healthcare and life sciences club. And then now as president, I get a lot of emails from people just wanting to talk about, the healthcare experience at Ross. And something I tell everyone is pick 3. And they're like, what does that mean? And I said, you're coming to business school. Most people come with several years of, work experience, life experience, and they're coming at very different stages in their life, right? Like some people are coming with their pets, some people are coming with their partners, their families, their kids, right? And everyone has different priorities, right? Obviously, getting a great job is probably number one for most people, if not all. I would be surprised. But other than that, you have all the social stuff that comes with an MBA. It is a fun program, right? Like a lot of travel, a lot of like nights out. With Michigan, you get the football games, you get all of that as well. Academic.
Better than public health, right?
I mean, hey, I always joke that my MPH is my middle child degree. One, because it was right in the middle, but I also don't talk about it as much. But yeah, like the social stuff, academics, especially if you don't have a business background, right? That stuff is fundamental to performing well in whatever job you go into. All the other clubs and leadership opportunities, there's so many opportunities for research and all that kind of stuff, and so you really have to pick 3. I didn't pick 3. I tried to do it all, and even now, with such little time to graduation. I sometimes wonder like, oh, I missed out on this, I missed out on that. Oh, I wish I did, the nonprofit board fellows program that Taya mentioned. Oh, wish I'd done Sling. Like, I wish I'd done all these things. And it's important for me to look back and be like, that's okay. You have to say no to, a few things in order to do the things that you do really, really well. And so for me, obviously getting a great job, that was my number one priority, checked, right? Number two, learning business. I'm still working on that. That is finance does not come easy, easy to me, but I've learned how to do it because of my MAP, because of, SVF, because of my courses, right? And then number three was all the, mentorship and leadership opportunities that I've been afforded and selected into, just focusing on all of those, I think has made this experience, wonderful. And I think wherever anyone goes, like, pick your three, right? If you have a kid, obviously that's very important and you may have to sacrifice other things. If, you think like the social stuff is really, really important to you, that's phenomenal. Find a school that will give you those opportunities, right? Academics, all of those things, like you can find programs that will kind of offer you a mix of everything. For me, that was Michigan. I hope, of course, for anyone watching that, it is for them as well.
Taya, are all your students as enthusiastic about the MBA experience at Ross as Geets is?
I mean, test it. I think it's true. I usually say that to prospective students is test us, test the network. We are responsive. It is vast, but responsive and passionate. You can usually tell even over email that somebody's excited to tell you about Ross, or if you're visiting Ann Arbor, they'll make restaurant recommendations unprompted. Say, go stop by this place. You have to go to Zingerman's, or go to, make sure you walk through the Diag. I think you feel that passion in every conversation you have with alums. And that's one thing, a piece of advice I always give students is measure your energy after you talk to different people from different school and see if if that energy vibes with you. That passion here is truly unmatched in my belief.
Yeah, that's really true. And I have to say, I've met a lot of Ross students over the years. And they're equally as passionate, enthusiastic, and loving the experience as Geets is. So for all of you out there who want to pursue finding out more about the program, Taya, do you have an ambassador type program? Geets said she talks to a lot of applicants. Is that one way to get more information?
It is. You know your stuff, John. We have an ambassador website that has over 300 current students, a mix of MBA 1s and MBA 2s, who you can filter by geography. So if you want to find somebody from a particular country before Ross, you can filter on that. Or if you want to find somebody interested in healthcare or involved in the Michigan Business Women Club, there's a number of filters, and you can find a couple of people that seem like they'd be able to answer the questions that you might have about those organizations.
Yep, that's all great stuff. And of course, go to the website. I also want to just mention, look, we all have this love-hate relationship with rankings. And only last week, the Princeton Review ranking came out. And why I mention it is because Michigan has done really well in it. You were number 1 for best professors, number 4 for best classroom experience, number 5 for career prospects. Those are things that I think really matter in an MBA experience. And we kind of parse the ranking for them. And Michigan is, in top 4. So if your ranking's obsessed, there's a little data point for you on Michigan Ross. So listen, Taya and Geets, thank you so much. Geets, good luck in your career. I'm sure you don't need any luck, but nonetheless, it can't hurt. And for all of you out there, I hope you've got a really good sense of the MBA experience at Michigan Ross. It is really a spectacular one. It's a world-class education. And if anything, you will experience FOMO, the fear of missing out, as Geets has, because there'll be so many different things you can do and get involved in to make your experience so rich and so vivid and so memorable. Hey, thanks for watching. This is John Byrne, Poets and Quants.